Stalked at Night by the Lioness 0809. I am 27 now, but this happened when I was 16. When I was a teenager, I had a turbulent home life. By the time I was 16, I no longer lived with either of my parents, but instead lived with my brother, Nick, who is about 2 years older than me. He got me a job at the fast food restaurant, where he was manager, so I could help him pay the rent. One night, both of us were at work, along with 2 other employees. I got off work at 11. Nick's girlfriend Anne was coming to pick him up when he got off work an hour later, but I didn't want to be there with nothing to do, and the walk home was down a well-lit main road, so I decided to leave. Unfortunately, I forgot that there was an area of the walk that wasn't so well lit, and it was a particularly long stretch. I had just walked away from the building I worked in when I saw the outline of a man walking towards me in the opposite direction. I couldn't see his face in the darkness, but he was tall and lanky with a distinctive gait. I didn't think he'd actually hurt me, but I figured better safe than sorry, and I crossed to the opposite side of the road so we wouldn't cross paths directly. After he was out of sight, I crossed back, since that was the right side of the road I needed to be on, which will henceforth be referred to as the right side of the road. A few minutes up the road, I was in a better lit area, but it was still pretty dark. I heard footsteps behind me, and I turned around to see the same distinctive gait walking on the opposite side of the road, and walking quickly. He passed me on the opposite side, and when he was within a few yards ahead of me, crossed the road in front of me and ducked into some bushes. I immediately crossed the road until I was well past where he was hidden, and then crossed back to the right side. When I was sure he was out of earshot, I called the restaurant to speak to Nick. I told him what was going on, but that I didn't think the creep was still behind me. As I was saying this, I turned around to see the creep lighting a cigarette once again on the opposite side of the road from me. I was coming up on a cluster of convenience stores, so Nick told me to go in and buy something, just to give myself enough time to lose the guy. By the time I got there, the guy had already crossed to the right side of the road, a few hundred yards in front of me again, and I watched him duck behind a building. I went into the convenience store, walked around a bit, and then just bought a pack of gum. I felt like the clerk was suspicious of my behavior, but I actually thought it might be better if he called the cops. But he didn't, and I left with the gum. When I left the store, I once again crossed the street to the opposite side in case the guy was still behind the building waiting for me. There is a historic mansion on the right side of the main road, with a gate and a row of trees separating the property from the road. As I was coming upon it, I saw the creep peek out over the gate to check if I was still coming. I was on the opposite side of the road, but I was still creeped out, and I had had enough of this game of cat and mouse. I went back to the convenience store and was about to call Nick again when I saw Anne's car pull up in the parking lot. Apparently, after I got off the phone with Nick earlier, he had called her and asked her to come get me. I got in and explained everything to her that had been going on. We drove past the mansion, and I saw the guy standing still under one of the trees, waiting. I freaked out and yelled, "Oh my God, he's still there!" She pulled into the parking lot of the next store and called the cops. As she was on the phone with them, the guy walked right past her car and went inside. The cops were there in a minute or two, considering we were right next door to the police station. I got out of the car and told them all that had happened. as we were talking, the guy came outside, and I pointed him out. One of the cops went to talk to him and came back to me only a few minutes later. Apparently, the creep had told him that he was just walking to a friend's house. Both cops agreed that my account seemed a little too coincidental, but since the guy hadn't hurt or threatened me, they could do nothing. Whenever this event crosses my mind, I like to make myself feel better by thinking that he was just screwing with me, after seeing that I was obviously intimidated by him after our first crossing, and that he wasn't really planning on doing anything to me. But when I think of what could have happened to me if he really did have malicious intent, it scares me that I would have been stupid enough to walk home so late at night with nothing for protection.
Was stalked 6 years ago, was recently recontacted by little Gina.
6 years ago, I was 15. I went to an event, and I found a good friend of mine at the time, Ashley, and started to talk with her. She had a friend with her, Luke. Luke was 27. She introduced me to him. He seemed normal, and I had no weird vibes from him. After I stopped talking to Ashley, Luke decided to follow me around the entire event all night, but not talk to me, just follow. I didn't notice until a different friend of mine commented on the fact that there was a dude following me. So I decided to strike up a conversation because I assumed he was just a little shy and didn't know how to talk to me. He asked for my Facebook a little into the conversation, and I gave it to him. He started talking to me the following week, and it seemed like a normal conversation. At the time, I didn't know he was 27, and he didn't look it at all. If anything, I thought he was 20. He looked so young. He eventually told me his age. I had already stated that I was 15, but that did not seem to matter to this guy. After he felt comfortable enough in the conversation, I guess, he started to talk to me about more personal things. He explained how he regularly went to the bar with people into BDSM, and there were some people who went there that had collars, meaning that they were owned. I sort of brushed it off, because that's not my scene. Continuing on the following few weeks, though, he continued to talk to me about pretty sexual stuff, and I didn't really put any interest in it, often responding with, "Oh," and "Okay." One day, I went to his Facebook page, and he was commenting on one of his statuses about a forum that he was part of. I decided to go to his page, username, and there seemed to be a lot of things about me in it. Some examples were, "I really want to put a collar on her. She's so petite, she's almost too petite for my taste. There's other underage girls that hit on me, but I only want her." One of the scariest, in my opinion, was, "I told her she couldn't have any more guys over." The last one was from a conversation we had about him asking if I had a boyfriend at the time, and him, who I thought was jokingly stating that guys will only give you trouble. Don't invite them over. I just kind of laughed it off, not realizing he meant it, and he wanted me all to himself. After finding these things, I was pretty terrified, so I blocked him. Then, only a few days later, I found him outside of my house, staring into my window. I had never given him my address, so I don't know how he found out. It wasn't even on my Facebook either. I realized that this wasn't the first time either, considering he knew I had guys over. He must have been watching me for a couple of months. I ended up having to file a restraining order. I went to his forums often after I blocked him and put a restraining order on him, and he rampaged against me, saying that I was ungrateful that he was giving me the attention. I guess because so many girls liked him, so I was special, and I had no right to be anyone else's girl. It was pretty sick. Cut to 6 years later. I had forgotten about him for about 2 years. There were 4 that I was pretty scared, but the fear eventually died down. All of a sudden, I got a message 7 months ago from Luke on another account saying that he still thought of me and that I never left his mind. I blocked that account immediately. I'm sure that that one's in violation of the restraining order, but I was just too worn out from everything to take further action. Plus, he hasn't messaged me since. If he does try this again with a 3rd account, I'll take further action. But I'm moving an hour and 30 minutes away from here in the next few months, so I'm not as worried anymore. The Mystery of My House by Jocelyn, 1986. After reading a story similar to mine, I figured I'd post my story and maybe get some help. Background: I'm a 31-year-old female who purchased a house 6 months ago by myself. When I first moved in, I had a male friend staying with me to help me get adjusted from apartment life to house life, and because I don't live in the safest area. After a month, he left, and for the most part, I've always had someone here, and my schedule isn't consistent. The first month, it started with rocks around my house being removed. Not enough to really question it, but enough to have been noticed by myself and a few other people. One night, I was asleep, and my best friend was getting ready for work. She liked getting ready for work at my house because she had more privacy than at her home. And someone started messing with my back door, and she heard a female yell a few times. She was getting ready to go check when a voice said, "What? You're not gonna help me?" with an angry tone. There was a lot of break-ins around where I lived, so we figured it maybe was that. Over the course of my being here, I had several people come to my door at all hours, during the day, the middle of the night. Children, men, women, and none of them seemed to actually want much. One little girl was selling these chains you hang your phone on, but one was more concerned about myself and my friend with what she was selling. One was an old black lady dressed for church, pounding on my door at 2:30 in the morning. The second my boyfriend answered, she said, "Wrong house," and left. My boyfriend moved in 4 months ago, and things have picked up. Knocking on the back door at all hours. It doesn't matter if I'm home, he's home, or we're both home. Something will open the screen door on the front door. There's no easy way to see the front porch unless you open the door. Footsteps in the snow. And we've even chased people from my backyard over the fence and then watched them watch my house. The creepiest part is, things get moved around inside my house, or go completely missing. A few weeks ago we were getting intimate, and I heard a sound that definitely was male. My boyfriend didn't hear it, but later he told me that someone was in the doorway. I asked him why he didn't stop and check, and the typical male response was, "It felt too good, and if he wanted to watch, so be it." Except, I had no idea how someone could be getting in. There's no closets, except one in the living room. Weird house, and the crawl spaces are locked. I'm a clear-minded person. I could excuse some of it, but the weirdness is consistent and has been witnessed by everyone that comes to my house at some point, and it has been going on for so long that it seems they'd give up or make a move. It's making me really uneasy, mainly because it doesn't make sense. There's a million more little things like that have happened that I didn't include. We plan on adopting a puppy soon, installing cameras, changing the locks, and putting more lights in the backyard. Hopefully that all helps, but my boyfriend still works at 2 a.m., so it freaks me out. So, house creeper, maybe let's not meet.